Some of you might remember I've got a bladder snail breeding tank. These are an aquatic species of snail most people call pests within the fish trade. They get everywhere. Hitchhike in on plants and ornaments and just breed like crazy. But I quite like them. Not only are they cute, they're really interesting and active. The main purpose of the tank is breeding them. They're one of Marie's primary food sources, as they should be. But we're changing things up a bit. I added red rilly shrimp to the 7-foot aquarium around this time last year. They've been breeding like crazy and doing really well. But sadly I didn't consider the fish. Although none of the fish I stock in the 7-foot tank readily feed on the shrimp, their presence is enough to keep the shrimp in hiding. They don't often come out into the open, unlike the amino shrimp that are much more confident given their larger size. Since I ripped the tank apart while moving house, I also decided to catch as many of the red rillies that I can and move them into the snail tank, a shrimp snail tank. I've tested the water, still immaculate with perfect readings, just needs a bit of a makeover since it's become overrun with algae. First tackling the algae. When green algae becomes established, it can form hair-like strands, adopting the name hair algae. It grows incredibly fast and can be difficult to get rid of. It dwarfs plants below, and tangles in everything around it. It can choke an aquarium, blocking out the light and absorbing nutrients, causing the rest of the plants to struggle. Then I removed all the plants and wood, and stirred up all the silt. I hosed down the wood into a bucket outside to make sure any hitchhiking snails or shrimp were caught and put back into the aquarium. Scrubbed, siphoned, refilled, to be drained again. Of course running the water through a net into a bucket to catch any travelling crustaceans. Normally with shrimp you have to be careful about a large shift in parameters, otherwise the change can shock and kill them. Thankfully I'm lucky enough for the parameters to almost mimic the tap water on this occasion, so no problem at all. By regulating the temperature at the tap, and adding pet safe chlorine remover, we're good to go. I fancied a more open look. We can get a better look at the shrimp and also make the tank more accessible for maintenance, avoiding the previous state occurring again. So I played about with the bogwood and put some plants in place. Anubias, dwarf Anubias, Java fern and Hygrophila polysperma. The Anubias and Java ferns are slightly different to normal plants though. This long straight stem-like area the leaves grow from is called the rhizome. If the rhizome is buried under substrate, the plant will die. It typically attaches itself to wood and rocks to catch and filter nutrients straight from the water column. And it's common to tie them in place with fishing line, but I prefer to use Gorilla Glue Gel. It's safe for fish, cures in seconds, cures on damp surfaces, and you don't get left with pieces of unsightly fishing line poking your fish. Just pop it along the rhizome of the plant. Place where you want and hold down for a few seconds. It works on damp wood or stones, the water acts as a catalyst helping it cure faster. But you can't do this part underwater, it won't work. And that is job done. We can fully witness the shrimp and snails in all their glory now. The shrimp weren't complaining about the previous setup though. The females are breeding readily. Carrying eggs, they'll fan these constantly throughout the day, helping keep them fresh and avoiding any fungus taking hold of them. And if you look closely, the black line running down the back is the shrimp's digestive system. And that yellow area is more eggs. This is typically where the females store eggs waiting to be fertilised. Shrimp holding eggs like this is being called saddled. Whereas the females carrying fertilised eggs is known as being berried. The saddle female tells me the population is clearly happy and healthy. Some of them have a clutch of eggs out, fertilised and waiting to hatch, while also being saddled. The fact they've got some eggs growing waiting to hatch, but not only that, they're confident and healthy enough in their environment to have a second batch ready to go once the initial batch is finished and released. And on some of them, if you look closely enough, the babies are developed enough you can even start to make out their eyes. This species of shrimp hatch out as a fully formed shrimp, no metamorphosis to go through. There's two species of snail in this setup. Bladder snails, also known as tadpole snails. These are the ones bred and fed to Marie. Also ram's horn snails. These are too small to feed and hitch their way into the tank on a plant. They add a nice bit of variation to the colony though. The snails constantly lay eggs. Clear batches held in a jelly-like substance, keeping them safe and camouflaged till they hatch. And bladder snails are hermaphroditic, meaning they can self-fertilise their own eggs. They don't always do this though, and given the tank is well stocked with them, it's likely a rare occurrence. They're very much detrivores, meaning they typically feed on dead organic matter. They don't consume live plants, only dead rotting ones. And many fish keepers overfeed their fish without realising, causing excess food build-up. This is where the snails come in and thrive. They clear up this uneaten food, breed and repeat, so one snail can quickly turn into 50. This is why many keepers hate them and do everything they can to avoid and destroy population in their setups. But this job is part of the reason I love them. They essentially act as the woodlice I use in my reptile enclosures, clearing up excess waste, helping break it down for the plants to then absorb. I do weekly water changes on my 7-foot aquarium, but I never have to siphon the sand. Most people have to constantly clean their substrate to keep it in tip-top condition and avoid a layer of silt building up. In my case, the whole cycle works perfectly, all relying on each other to optimise output. This wasn't the case for the snail tank before the makeover though. There weren't enough plants to keep up with the snail output. When it comes to keeping the colours fresh and vibrant, a lot of keepers and breeders will cull any dull coloured shrimp or shrimp not displaying the typical Riley pattern. But personally, I quite like the variation and diversity of a natural selection. So long as the shrimp are all born healthy, I'm not fussed what colour or pattern they are. If it comes to it and they really are breeding down to dull coloured shrimp, which can be a possibility, I'll set up a separate aquarium to move any to. I don't plan to ever sell these shrimp, so it's not a concern about potentially damaging other Riley bloodlines with a mixed match of shrimp. The tank's completed now and looking much better than before. The main aim is still to breed snails and give Marie the best diet possible. I am however considering a small, maybe micro species of fish for the sake of keeping the shrimp population in check. The shrimp move much faster than the snails, increasing competition for food. I'll have to feed a bit extra to make sure there's still enough left over after the shrimp have eaten and the snails finally arrive to feed. And if the shrimp population explodes too much and thrives a little too well without any limiting factors, they'll surely give the snails a run for their money. The last thing I want is to minimise snail output, leaving me without enough food to feed Marie, and having to resort to feeding pellets more often. Which if you've seen the musk turtle feeding video, you'll know pellets can be a suitable food source, but they aren't optimal. More of a bonus to ensure a complete diet. We do need to make sure any fish won't be developing a taste for snails. Let me know if you have any recommendations. Off the top of my head, chili raspora come to mind. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.